So, what I am saying, though, we've got this book called the DSM, Diagnostics Manual, that basically is what all shrinks turn to figure out whether you're bipolar or borderline or whatever. All these categories of mental illness and emotional disorder. What I'm saying is that these are all different manifestations of one disorder, which is vagal interruption, vagal disconnection. Different manifestations, different ways that we adapt, different ways that we manage reality without the connection through our guts and our heart to real life, to the real world. Also without the highway that's supposed to bring chemicals from our guts to our head and balance our chemicals constantly, continually, right? So I also want to just mention that unconscious thoughts, unconscious experiences are chemical. There are real chemical consequences to everything you think and feel, even if you don't know you're thinking and feeling them. So you might have stuff going on inside you that you're smothering consciously, that you're not aware of consciously. But they're having a chemical consequence in your body. You might walk by somebody on the street and see a frown on their face, and you might unconsciously, internally think, they hate me. Right? But what happens internally is that all kinds of bad chemicals are released. But because you're not conscious that this is a thought you're having, and you're not breathing, and you're not hooked up here, you can't balance that perception with reality. They might have just been suppressing some gastrointestinal discomfort or something, it may not have had anything to do with what they're actually thinking. But you have these internal experiences, and they have chemical consequences, and that's what leads to a lot of this stuff. I wish I had more time to talk about this. I could talk for hours about this stuff, but I know, I just got to keep going. I'm sorry. I really wanted to say something about bipolar, but we'll get on. Unfortunately, the drugs they give us to treat this stuff make it worse. Okay? They further disconnect us from the vagus nerve, which could actually heal this stuff. Okay? Because they're giving us substitutes for drugs that we would normally be getting from our bellies. And because those drugs tend to make us, Prozac, whatever it is, there's so many different drugs that do this. They make us a little more functional by distracting us from the ways that we are rationally and rightly uncomfortable. There's really good reasons we're uncomfortable, right? You may be upset about how your kid's growing, really upset, viscerally. Your heart may really be hurt. And you really may desperately want to do something differently for your kid, or for your spouse, or for yourself, When they give us these drugs to make us more functional and more palatable to the rest of humanity, they really steal from us the ability to go into our negative feelings and figure out what we're upset about and do something about it. So, and not only that, it's not just doctors, but the drugs we take in order to cope further disconnect us, further mute the vagus, right? Think about it. What drugs do you, for me, it was sugar, too much food, too much work, relationships, whatever, lots of different things that I would use to distract myself from what I really felt about the really real things that I was upset about in my life. And so whether it's drugs giving us psychopharmaceuticals or ourselves giving us beer or pot or whatever it is, and again, it's not about the substance itself. Substance can be used to increase and enhance vagal sensitivity, or it can be, anything can be used to decrease it. You can use yoga to decrease your vagal sensitivity. People that do really beautiful postures, but have really very strong Uddiyana bandhas, right? What are they accomplishing with that Uddiyana bandha? If it's not increasing the visceral sensitivity, it's decreasing it. So you get people with premature Uddiyana bandha that just use that technique to just basically do what everybody else is doing, stay out of the belly, right? So, anyway, it's not just going crazy that losing our vagus gives us. When we have all these parts of us living inside of us that are really upset about stuff, they tend to do extreme things like driving your car into a tree to get your attention, or growing a tumor to get your attention. Diseases and accidents and injuries can be a result of vagal disconnection and this fragmentation of the nervous system. You have different personalities running your life, and a lot of them are unconscious. They're going to be trying to get your attention in different ways. There's a story I used to read, Elia Kazan. You guys know that guy, the director? Wrote a book called The Arrangement. And he talks about he's driving along, and all of a sudden he feels the hand of God reach down and turn his car steering wheel into a truck. And he has this big crash, and it changes his whole life. And he has to stop being an ad executive and starts being a guru or whatever he becomes. Sometimes, you know, inner parts have to do really drastic things to get you to change course, right? But, so, I mean, poor JFK Jr., remember when he crashed his plane? He just wanted to be an actor. His mom wouldn't let him. You know, he probably had some parts that were upset about that. You know, he might have not been paying too much attention. I don't know if that's what happened, but I mean, I was a pilot for a long time, so it's hard to fly a plane. And maybe that was just an accident, but maybe it wasn't. Now, so this is not a real picture. That's not really Sarah Palin, but Sarah Palin. My only point with this slide is that there are real benefits to not facing your stuff. What you really feel, what's really in your viscera, what your vagus nerve is really sensing, may be very, very uncomfortable and unpleasant. There may be great reasons to not want to feel it. My grandfather was an executive at GE. You know, he came over to this country from Lithuania. He was a smart guy, you know, earned his way through college and became a chemist and worked his way up the ladder at GE. But he kind of reached his limit at vice president. And this really bummed him out. He wanted to be the president of the company, you know. And they kind of moved him sideways. And at the same time, his wife got MS. So rather than deal with the reality of his life, you know, this is where I'm going as a VP. Do I want to stay in this thing? Do I want to do something else in life? Do I want to be a research chemist or whatever? He chose instead to become his wife's caregiver for the next 50 years. And they had this very codependent, sort of unpleasant, downward spiral in life. And my grandma was really smart, sharp lady. She could have done lots of things. But instead, she ended up living in a wheelchair, sort of melting over the years. And he lived in his armchair, drinking his gin and Mr. Pibbs, which is what they have in Indiana. And so he bailed. He bailed on what he could have felt and what he could have done. And lots of people do this for lots of reasons. But the point is, there may be stuff that's so uncomfortable you really don't want to face it. You really don't want to feel it. So my only point here is there's real reasons that people choose to not go here. It can be really scary and really terrifying. In fact, it could be fatal to go there. Or it could feel like it's going to kill you to go there. So I just want to say that, you know, the pain can be intense. The reason you leave here can be quite intense. The choices you make in your life from being disconnected here can be very intense to feel after the fact. So it's not a minor problem. And it's not our fault, right? We come here and we're just being natural animals. It's not even his fault. He's just a dude, you know. He was raised by his dad, president, you know. He's like the schlub kid who, you know, stupider than Jed and whatever. It's not his fault. He adapted however he had to adapt. But, you know, but still, we can do really clumsy, deadly, harmful things because we've been robbed of the sensors that let us make braver, stronger, realer choices, right? So instead of having a continual culture of benevolence that grows healthy, connected kids and have healthy, powerful, real adults making real adult benevolent decisions, we instead have disconnected kids that grow up into disconnected grown-ups who do terrible things and stupid things and fuck up the planet worse. So excuse my language, but I couldn't think of a better word for it. Anyway, there's one quick example. Okay, I still have 4 minutes. So, one quick example. In Jean Lidloff's book about the iguana, she tells one story of a guy, tribesman, who had an idea for a crib. He's like, this is going to be great. I'm going to build a crib for my kid, put him in it. He's going to be totally safe. They'll have a blast. So he builds a crib, puts the kid in it. The kid looks around. It takes about 1 second for him to burst into tears, just screaming in agony because he's trapped. And he can't be free. And the guy instantly, feeling that horrible agitation in his own belly, takes the kid right out of the crib, chops up the crib, burns it that night in a fire, and that was the end of the crib for the iguana, right? It took about 4 seconds for that idea to die. If that guy couldn't feel his belly and his heart resonating with his kid, he might stand there for 3 hours and say, he'll cry himself out of it, you know? And, you know, so visceral connection is really critical for making healthy choices. And before I get to the third part, any questions about the second part?
What do you do about it?
That's what we're going to talk about. Yes. Not necessarily a starter guide. But that is David Swenson, one of my teachers, and he's a lovely practitioner.
Is that example you just gave about the crib from that
Yes.
book, Continuum
The
Concept?
continuum concept, yes. Okay?